Okay, Karen, it's all set up, and Mayor O'Brien, it's ready to go.
Very good. Okay, welcome to our virtual meeting of the Burlingame City Council on the 19th of January. City Clerk, would you like to review our public participation guidelines?
Hi, yes. There's a couple things to remember. We like for you to stay on mute and with your video camera off unless you're presenting. This just makes sure that our meeting runs a little smoother. We can hear everyone speak. If you would like to participate in the meeting during the public comment sections, what you can do is you can either email me at publiccomment@burlingame.org, or you can use the Zoom chat feature and send me a message. And then your last option is to raise your hand, which is a little Zoom feature, and it'll let us know that you'd like to speak live during the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. All right, now we'll go on to the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'm going to have our city attorney, Scott Spansel, say the Pledge of Allegiance for us.
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, something has just happened to my screen, so bear with me. Okay, everyone disappeared all of a sudden. Okay, got you back. All right. Can we have roll call, Megan, please?
Councilmember Beach,
Here.
Councilmember Colson,
Here.
Councilmember Bradley,
Councilmember Me, is that it?
Yep.
Present.
Vice Mayor Ortiz,
Vice Mayor Me is here.
Mayor O'Brien.
Here. All right, we're all accounted for. Scott, report out from closed session.
Sure, no reportable action was taken in closed session regarding the claims listed in the closed session agenda.
Great, thank you. Now I will go into upcoming events. And if I do miss something, colleagues, please add after I am done here. All right, so we have safe and reliable transportation for seniors over 70. For those 70 and older, you are invited to register for Got Wheels annual membership card that will enable you to take up to 6 one-way trips or 3 round trips per month for only $5. With the Got Wheels card, participants may schedule rides as needed on a 24 hours a day, 7-day a week to any destination through the following cities: Daly City, Colma, Brisbane, South San Francisco, San Bruno, Millbrae, Burlingame, Hillsborough, Half Moon Bay, Montera, Moss Beach, and El Granada. Membership is limited, so you can call the program coordinator at 650-403-4300, extension 4329. The program was actually developed by Peninsula Family Services and funded through San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. I just wanted to let you know that the Fresh Market is back, and it started this past Sunday, and it goes from 9 to 1:30. The Burlingame Public Library Homework Center is now opened every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday through the 23rd of April, with the exception of February 16th to the 18th and April 6th to 8th. And it goes from 3:30 to 5:30. The spring semester of the Virtual Homework Center is open. Students in grades kindergarten through 8th can log on to Zoom and be paired with a teen mentor with a 3.5 average and above, and they can get help actually with reading, writing, science, math, and a variety of languages. So if you have any questions, please email the teen librarian. Her name is Jenny, with any questions at miner@plsinfo.org. The BCE Endowment is hosting a climate plan conversation on Wednesday, January 20th at 7:30 via Zoom. The Burlingame Community Education Foundation Council is sponsoring a talk about Burlingame's efforts to combat climate change. And this is the first of 3 forums planned for 2021, featuring community leaders talking about different aspects of Burlingame's future. Panelists will include San Mateo County Supervisor David Pine, former Mayor Terry Nagel, who is the chair of the Sustainable San Mateo County and co-founder of the CEC. We also have Councilmember Brownrigg, Segal Michael, who is our Burlingame Sustainability Coordinator, and Rusty Hopewell, who leads the Burlingame School District's Healthy School Environmental Program. Registration is required, and you can register at bcefoundation.org. Also want to give a shout out. February is Love Your Library Month for kids and teens. Stop by the Bellevue door of the Burlingame Main Library any Saturday in February from noon to 2 and receive a free paperback book. Also, the Library Story Walk has been moved to the west end of Washington Park along Carolyn Avenue. The current story is Polar Bear in the Snow by Mac Barnett. The story will remain up until March, and then they'll have a new story displayed. Rec to Go boxes are available monthly. They include 5 to 6 craft kits and an activity. So the price for residents is $25 per box, and you can sign up through the Recreation Division. Colleagues, do you have anything to add? Okay, looks like we covered it all. Oh, Councilmember Beach, I think you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick reminder to the community for those who are interested in the Peninsula Interchange Overpass project. The City of San Mateo is hosting a public meeting next Wednesday, the 27th at 6 p.m. And if you go to the City of San Mateo's website or you Google it, there's also some information in our city e-news. That's Wednesday, the 27th at 6 p.m. regarding the status of that proposed project on the Peninsula Avenue interchange. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Beach. So we'll move on to presentations. We do have 2 presentations this evening. So we are going to start out with the Burlingame Aquatic Club presentation, and we'll have our Park and Rec Director, Margaret Klomstad.
Good evening, Mayor O'Brien and council members. I am going to actually turn it over to Rob Gill, who is the Executive Director of the Burlingame Aquatics Club. I also believe we have Jenny Smith, who is their controller on this call, if we need that resource. And I believe their board president also, Paul Cosino, I believe that's how you say his last name, I believe is joining us tonight. But Rob's only been with us a short period of time, but I don't want to steal his thunder, and I'm going to let him take it away. Rob, can you unmute yourself and put yourself on the screen? And then I think our city clerk will be sharing, so you can put your presentation up. Rest of you.
Rob can share it himself, Margaret.
Go ahead, Rob.
Thank you. All right, is that working?
Yeah, you're up.
You're on.
Great. Well, good evening, Mayor O'Brien and council members. Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Robert Gill. I've been the executive director of Burlingame Aquatic Club since March of 2020. Before that, I coached for BAC for about 4 years. I've got about 10 years of experience working in aquatics with various teams and companies, both nonprofit and city run. And as Margaret said, we have both our board president and our controller on the call, just in case there's anything we need them to clear up at the end of the presentation. So a bit about who we are. Our mission at Burlingame Aquatic Club is to serve our community by providing excellent aquatic opportunities in a safe and supportive environment for all participants. There are 2 parts to BAC. One is a competitive program, which includes adult and youth swim teams and water polo teams. And then the other half is our community programs, which include swim lessons, lap swim, recreational swimming, and aqua aerobics. and the community side we do on behalf of the city of Burlingame. So we're here today to give an update on where we have been and what we've been doing over the last 2 years, and to give you guys a status update on the club and its health and its financial situation. So where has BAC been? In May of 2018, construction began on the BHS pool, which was meant to be a 3-month project. At the time, BAC was still conducting programming as normal at other pools, including San Mateo High School and Cappuccino High School. At this time, during summer of 2018, we learned that construction was extended indefinitely because we found additional structural damage to the pool. So we were not sure when we were going to be able to return. In fall of 2018 until December 2019, BAC moved between different satellite locations with reduced programming. And we had our youth polos team was able to practice at Mercy High School at the only stable pool that we had. With the help of Burlingame Parks and Rec, BAC was able to resume at San Mateo Union High School District and the City of San Mateo pools. Generally, we were located at the school district pools while they weren't being used by the district. And in times where they were being used by the district, we went to San Mateo pools, including Joinville Pool and King Pool. The BAC swim team over that time ended up hopping between these pools over 10 times in that short amount of time. During this time, from summer 2018 to December 2019, BAC essentially had to enter survival mode. While we did try to run as much community programming as possible, several programs became untenable due to the lack of a steady location, poor attendance, difficulty keeping employees, etc. So BAC returns on January 6th of 2020 after nearly 2 years of being out of the BHS pool. The only other programs running at the time were water polo, which again was at Mercy High School, but we were able to bring our swim team back as our first program back. At this time, the BAC Board of Directors began searching for a new ED with hopes of finding someone in time to start for a full summer of aquatics programs. And on March 7th, I was officially hired. On March 13th, 1 week after my hire, all of our programs were shut down due to the pandemic and shelter in place. Swim team was still able to run in a limited capacity, but everything else was shut down. The head coach, Ben Chung, and myself continued to work to prepare for as much programming as possible over the summer, as we were still unsure what exactly to expect in terms of COVID restrictions. With the help of Burlingame Parks and Rec, we were able to bring on an experienced contractor. Her name was Rebecca Sermeno. She was able to help me with my training and also to help us plan, create, and prepare programs for relaunch. This contractor happened to have great connections with aquatics industry leaders and professionals, particularly within Alameda County and Contra Costa County. And we worked with these other aquatics facilities to develop our plans and stringent safety guidelines for reopening amidst the pandemic. Some of these bodies included the National Recreation and Parks Association, California Parks and Rec Society, the City of Concord, the City of Newark, and the East Bay Regional Parks District. On June 22nd, BAC was able to open its doors for the first time since March. The programs back in the water are swim team and lap swimming, as they were the ones who fell in line with the county health guidelines at the time. With the help of the contractor and input from the Red Cross, we were able to run a COVID-safe lifeguard training course. And to date, we've had 0 COVID incidents that have not needed to close our doors since we reopened. Age group and masters swim teams currently have large wait lists, and all of our programs are running at capacity, including community programs, and we have daily wait lists for lap swim lanes. So moving forward, BAC is going to continue to stay up to date and at the forefront of safe aquatics programming in a post-COVID world. We have big plans for our upcoming summer, and we'll be ready to serve the community with as much programming as possible. Our priorities will be set on water, safety, and swim lessons, as they are key to any community's aquatics programs. Since June 22nd, we've resumed many of our community programs, including lifeguarding courses, lap swimming, aqua aerobics, and water walking. And we will begin private lessons for the community in February, when we return after BHS's pool's yearly maintenance. We are ready to resume Learn to Swim and recreational swim as soon as it's safe. I want to give you an idea of what we've been able to provide to the community, even in the pandemic. This chart is a comparison of how many participants our community programs are serving versus our most recent full year, which was 2017. To be clear, this is not including our competitive offerings. This is just our community. Since June, our numbers have been mostly on the rise, but you'll see some fluctuations like in August, which was, we dropped a little bit due to the fires. We had to close because of the smoke. Since September, we've actually been serving more members than we typically see come through our doors, which is amazing considering we didn't have capacity limitations in 2017 the way we do now. The vast majority of these participants are residents of Burlingame. Our weekly offerings are typically close to full, if not full, at the time that non-residents are allowed to register for them. Now that you've seen where we've been and how we've been serving the community, we think it's a good idea to show you how our finances are doing for both competitive and community, and we'll start with competitive. So how did our program support itself through the closure? With the help of Burlingame Parks and Rec, we acquired pool space at very reasonable rates within the city of San Mateo. We had to make several staffing cuts, which included 3 full-time employees and nearly 40 part-time employees, since we lost our ability to run community programs. And also at the time, our executive director, Sylvia Lamb, went on maternity leave, but continued to support the club part-time. After all of that, how could we have made it through COVID? Well, with the onset of COVID, we got right to work on applying for grants and loans to help us weather the storm. We were granted a $58,000 paycheck protection loan, and we also applied and received several grants from USA Swimming and Pacific Swimming that were allocated towards COVID-related PPE and cleaning supplies. For these reasons, it might look like we're a little negative, but as you'll see, I'll show you our graph here. Our PPP loan is not recognized yet because it's still a liability on our books. We are expecting to receive full forgiveness for the loan, and once we do receive forgiveness for the loan, it's going to push our numbers to look a little bit more break even. As you can see here, this is our competitive program revenue and expenses for the calendar year. March through August, ooh, I didn't switch it, sorry. March through August, we sustained some fairly significant losses. You also might notice some outliers here. In February, that was our last full-scale swim meet. We generally host 3 meets a year, and they're essential to our business. September was our annual registration renewal for the swim team. This is a once yearly bump in revenue that we see. It helps us cover small losses that we see through the year. And then also there was a small gain you'll see in December. That was because we were able to host 2 intra-squad swim meets, which is just our swim team, which helped boost our revenue a little bit there too. Our last grouping there shows our average revenue and expenses on the year. But be aware that the average is going to be slightly skewed due to the outlier months, and the actual numbers reflect us in a loss position overall. So for community finances, for many years, the City of Burlingame has assisted BAC in providing community programs with an annual subsidy. At our peak, the highest subsidy we had received was $150,000 for a year. This fiscal year, in lieu of a subsidy, the city is committed to covering up to $200,000 towards operational costs of the pool. This method is going to help BAC to focus on rebuilding programs after such a long closure time. And it will also help the city and BAC determine the actual costs of running this new pool, as no one really knows what those are. And at that point, we will reevaluate the methodology and amount of support BAC will request from the city to provide community programs. Here you can see our community programs revenue and expenses. As you can see, community programs do run at a loss, and they traditionally have, hence the support from the city. However, we are expecting to be able to shore up some of that once we're able to run a full slate of programs again, particularly our Learn to Swim program. And here you can see the overall health, our overall health as a club. We've been running at a fairly significant loss on the calendar year, but we do expect that PPP loan will bring us closer to break even once it's forgiven and once we're able to recognize it as income instead of as a liability. And again, the average here does skew the numbers a little bit because of those outlier months. In reality, we are in a loss position. So that's the end of my presentation. We would love it if you could all check out our website and follow our new blog, which we're using to keep our community members up to date. And I'd like to open up for questions if the council has any.
Thank you very much, Rob. Do any of my colleagues have questions? Councilmember Coulson.
Thank you, Rob. Very good presentation. I really appreciate you guys, giving us an update on the numbers. I also really want to encourage the board and the BAC to be as transparent as possible around the numbers, because it really helps us to understand as a council how we can help you. So when I look at those numbers, they're kind of month by month. Do you have a sense of your overall aggregate financial position and sort of size of your PPE loan? And then what is the, what percentage does the 200,000 play in the overall budget?
So that's a hard question for me to answer, just because I don't really know what we've been charged for pool use at this time. I think last time I spoke to Nicola Christie, who's my contact through City Parks and Rec, she only had been billed once from the school district. So we're really not sure how much the pool costs to run. In general, I think Jenny, our controller, can give you the strongest idea of how we are doing financially right now. But in terms of what that $200,000 or how much of that has been used, we really don't know yet.
Okay, but you'll work with the staff if they have questions or as things are coming along here. And really, I'm asking from a place of sincerely making sure we want to help you. This is a really valuable program for the community, especially the work that we're doing with the community swimmers and the Learn to Swim, and all of that is very popular and very critical. So we just, I know there's an item on our agenda a little bit later where we're going to have an opportunity to, it's on the consent, I believe, to approve that. And it's great that the high school district is going to extend that analysis, because we don't really know what it costs to operate the pool. But I just, my experience with a lot of nonprofits in the city is that just the more information you can give the staff and the more transparent you guys can be, the easier it is for us to help you and to make sure that you guys emerge from this in a position to be able to continue the operations.
Absolutely. And I appreciate the sentiment, and we are definitely on the same page. The city has been instrumental in helping us get through this, and we're going to definitely work together.
Councilmember Brownrigg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I just want to thank you, Mr. Gill, for keeping this all together. I want to thank, the BAC club as a whole. It is a super important asset to our community, just as Councilwoman Coulson said. And I think we all collectively tip our hats to keeping any business going, especially since you've done COVID twice in a way, having the pool offline and then COVID is really remarkable. And I just want to thank you. And I also want to give a shout out to your underwriters, your private philanthropists and who are members of this community. And yes, the city contributes, and any city that runs a pool program, our excellent director of Parks and Rec, who used to run pool programs, will tell you these are never profitable enterprises, but they are part of what makes a great community. And so I want to thank you guys for the work, but also your underwriters for the financial help behind the scenes that a lot of our public doesn't even see. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So are there any other comments or questions from my colleagues? If not, to our city clerk, is there anyone from the public that has sent any comments?
I believe that Paul Cozen wants to speak.
Yeah.
Okay, I see your picture, Paul, so
You.
please go ahead.
I just wanted to Councilmember Colson's comment that just in terms of the flow of that $200,000, the district bills the city some amount as to the actual operating costs, and the $200,000 is sort of a max number that would be arrived based on actual. So just in terms of the flow of information, the actual or flow of expenditures, the district will get a bill. The district will apportion some of that bill to the city, and then the city has agreed at a certain amount. So I just want to be clear about we're 100% in line with your first comment of, in terms of transparency and being able to describe to you exactly what the impact of these costs are. We're very happy to. I realize our graphs weren't super specific today. Maybe we could put a little better numbers on the bar charts, but we're happy to be super. And I think the city can attest to the fact that we've provided detailed financial statements by quarter of our operating costs to make sure that everybody has visibility into what the costs are, how we're allocating them. We'll continue to do that, and if there's any follow-up need be. But the 200K number is is sort of a max based on actuals, as opposed to a hard dollar commitment that goes out the door at the beginning. We're as interested as everyone else as to what does it cost to operate this pool, so that we can figure out what programming we can offer to the community, and what pricing we need to set for our competitive programs to hit break even. That's one good thing too, is a reminder, we're a 501(c)(3). We are a nonprofit. Our job is to offer these programs at break even as much as we can, and so we just need to. That data is going to be super helpful to us as well. So as we get more information, that'll be great for all of us to calibrate what we can do going forward.
Yeah, and if I can add also, we did finally get the first quarter billing, and our portion was about $66,000. It doesn't always mean, I mean, we're coming out of the summer months where we tend to use a lot more chemicals. In the winter, we use more heating. So we really do need a full year. And that's one of the things that gives BAC an opportunity just to focus on their programming, and we'll take care of the pool for this time period. And also on the agenda tonight on consent is our agreement with the district, which extends that look back period to apportion the use of the pool, because it's impossible to do that with COVID. So that gives us some more time to see how the pool costs. Theoretically, they should go down a bit. There's less water in the pool, but we'll see. A lot of it depends on the use and the weather.
Great. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak? Please raise your hand. Okay, I don't see anyone. So on that note, thank you very much, Mr. Gill, for your presentation. Welcome to your new position. Granted, it was the week before COVID, but you have done a great presentation, and we look forward to working with you collaboratively during this time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, very good. So we will go on to our next presentation, which will be the update on the library service during the pandemic. And we will have our library director. Where is Brad?
Here I am.
Here you are. We will have Brad McCulley.
Thank you, Mayor O'Brien and Council, for letting me present tonight. I'm just going to jump right in because I'm sure our city clerk has set a timer and is getting nervous as we speak. So let me just share my screen here. Oops. From the beginning. Okay, Again, thank you for letting me present. I want to start off by saying how absolutely proud I am of my library staff for being able to reevaluate and reset. Notice I didn't use the word pivot because I think that's word is to use these days. To reset back in March and April when we first went into lockdown, and still be able to provide almost all of the services that our library has traditionally provided right now, except for being able to come into the library and use our space, sit down and read a newspaper or browse a collection. Other than that, we are providing almost every single service in a different format, sometimes in a different way, but it's still the same service. So I just want to say how proud of my staff for doing that, for getting us up to speed, and for making everything happen so fast for the public's benefit. Right now, we are down to 24 staff members broken up into 2 cohorts, working in the building to provide services, curbside service, broken up into cohorts so that in case someone were to come down with COVID, it wouldn't stop our services. It would slow things down, but it wouldn't stop them. We normally run with a staff of about 70 when you include our hourly part-time staff. But given our circumstances, we aren't able to have them in the building. And so we're doing what we can with our full-time staff. So first I'd like to talk about our circulation division. Circulation traditionally, they are the team that creates new library accounts, library cards. They get the books on the shelves. They empty the book drops. The shipments that come in from other libraries when we move books around the county, they're the ones that empty those shipments, get them checked in, get them back on the shelves. And so they're now a team of 3 people. But now they play an even more important role in what we're doing right now. And so they couldn't do that with just 3 people. So pretty much everybody on my staff takes turns helping out this division, doing what they need to do to get the curbside service going. When we first started out in lockdown, they immediately started doing Zoom library card registration so that anybody who didn't have a library card, wanted to check out ebooks, wanted to access any of our online services, they could do that with a Zoom registration. So that was an easy fix. When we were finally able to open up our book drops and allow people back into the building, we started quarantining materials for 4 days. Our lane room, you wouldn't recognize because it's nothing but tables and giant stacks of books that, like I said, they stay in there for 4 days. 4 days is about the average that most libraries in the county are quarantining their materials to make it safer for patrons to then handle and use at home. Every day, our staff come into the building and there's a list of books, a list of materials that have been requested. Staff pull off the shelf and get ready to either go into a curbside service or get sent to another library. Just to give you an idea how busy we are right now doing that. During pre-pandemic, we would pull anywhere from 100 to 150 items a day. We are pulling around 900 to 1,000 items a day now. Mainly because people, if you think about it, that was what, we had 1,000 people, give or take, come through our doors every day, and they would do that themselves. So we're doing that for them. We're pulling the items. They don't get to come in and browse. They're just, they are asking us to do it for them. And then, as I said, we get shipments from other libraries because a lot of those holds that we are pulling are going to Millbrae, they're going to San Mateo, they're going to different libraries within the county, and then they're sending stuff to us because a lot of the items that that our patrons request maybe not be in our library. So everything's just getting moved around. So shipments have to be packed, unpacked, that kind of thing. And then there's the curbside pickup aspect of it, where you have to have appointments. Currently, we have it dialed in to the point where you can place a hold on an item and get an appointment, and a lot of times you can make it day of. At the very least, you can get it the next day. So that's great. And then also, this is the department that would traditionally check in books from patrons and say, oh, you've got X number of fines, you returned this item late. We no longer have late fines, overdue fines for the Burlingame Public Library. Most libraries in San Mateo County no longer have overdue fines. If someone keeps a book out or a DVD out longer than they should, what happens is they are billed for that item, and that goes on their record. And until they return it, that bill does not come off. And if they keep it for too long, then they're actually billed for it, and it goes to a credit agency. So we still get our materials back. So there's no problem there. Our circulation statistics for this department, another thing that I wanted to point out was we have reduced hours right now because we have limited staff, and we can't keep the library open 7 days a week the way we used to. But when you compare hour to hour, our current schedule, our circulation is the same as if we were still open. So for last year, we circulated 90,000 items, and that was with 13,000 appointments of curbside pickup. So that was for 2020, and that wasn't even for a full year, because January and February were knocked, actually even March were knocked off. So that's a lot of circulation, a lot of work that had to be done in a short period of time, not including any of our online books. So. Moving on to children's, our children's department, again, they have done an awesome job taking what they normally do in person with children's, with families, and making it online, making it safe. So story time is a really big function of our children's department. They immediately got to work and made story time online. Year to date, they have done 88 story times online, YouTubed, and with an attendance of around 6,500 kids and families. That's a lot of story times and a lot of people attending. Same thing with STEAM events or craft events or any type of entertainment that they would normally have done in the library. They have switched. If it's a STEAM event or a craft event, they will bag up the items that would be part of this craft event, and patrons can come and pick those up before the event, take them home, and then the day of, they'll have the items to do in their own home what they would normally do in the library at a craft or a STEAM event. They are also doing children's book bundles, which is kind of a way for parents and kids to browse our collection. And so a parent may contact us and say, can you create a book bundle for us based on the theme of princesses, or based on the theme of sharing or bugs, whatever their child is interested in. And our librarians will then go through the collection and gather 10 to 20 books, based on the theme that the parent would like to see their kid interact with. And then we provide these book bundles to parents. It's a lot of work. It's very, very staff intensive, but it's well worth it. To date, we have done 2,128 book bundles for a total of around 11,000 books. So that's a lot. It's a lot of work, but like I said, it's worth it, and the parents really, really appreciate that. As Mayor O'Brien talked about in the announcements, our homework center has been popular this past year. The teens who are helping mentor young kids provided over 30 sessions. assisting over 130 kids in their homework. And so that's awesome because it takes some of the onus off of parents. Parents may not be as familiar with some of these subjects that they're getting tutored in. So I think that's a great service that our children's department is providing. Moving on to our adult services. This department has really stepped up, because normally they're at the information desk. As soon as you walk into the library right there, you can walk up and you can ask them a reference question. You can ask them how to download ebooks. You can ask them, pretty much anything under the sun, and they're going to find an answer for you. And so they had to go back to something a little more old school and do it by telephone reference. And so through Google phone capabilities, they were able to use their laptops and talk to people as they called into our main line. And our staff have provided, so far, they have answered about 3,000 phone calls for 2020. A lot of those were around setting up appointments, but a lot of it was also, as I said, can you tell me over the phone how to download an ebook? How to, access Canopy, which is our streaming movies, or any of the online services that we provide. So that keeps the adult services staff very busy. And like I said, children's services, adult services, every different department is also at the same time, when they're not doing their normal daily duties, they're then in the building shelving books, helping with the shipment, helping with curbside service, because that doesn't happen by itself either. Adult services also provides a lot of events. For 2020, they provided 142 adult programs with around 1,500 attendees. That's a fair amount when you consider how much has moved online, and there's so much out there for adults to do. So I think those numbers are great. And one of the services that adult services provides are ebooks, as I've said it, and so the circulation of our ebooks has almost matched what our physical books are. For 2020, we circulated around 80,000 ebooks this year. So compared to 90,000 in our physical collection, I think those numbers are pretty good. Plus, it helps us in the long term. Sorry, and I meant to say earlier, if anyone has any questions as I'm going through, please feel free to stop me as I'm going. It might be easier that way. Our technical services, this team is normally, they would be running our lower level services, our tech lab. They are also the team that orders and processes all the new books that come into the library. We haven't stopped getting new books just because we're in a pandemic, because customers are still requesting new books. Everybody wants something new to read. So we get boxes and boxes of new books coming in daily that have to be processed. So that's what this team does. This is also our IT team, this group. And so they were instrumental in getting all of our staff laptops, VPNs, getting everybody set up when we were in lockdown and we could no longer access the building, so that we could still provide those services, whether it's online phone calls or whether it's creating an online story time, whatever the case may be. They were the ones that our staff went to and said, "Here's what I want to do. How can you help me get this done?" They were also the staff that in the beginning of the pandemic, the county reached out to all the libraries to ask if we could 3D print face shields and PPE for county first responders. And so our staff stepped up and were able to 3D print around 200 face shields. Some of those went to our police department. I believe some went to our fire, but a lot of those went to county first responders. And so that was an awesome support facet that this group took up. And right now they are still providing hotspot requests for Burlingame patrons that may not have access to the internet at their house, or don't want to use the internet that the library can provide, on the front porch or in the parking area. So you can check out a hotspot for a couple of weeks and you'll have internet at your house. They provide those. And then they're also doing curbside print requests. Not everybody has a printer. Not everybody needs printing these days, but if you do, you can always request it with the library. And so this group has been thinking outside the box in those areas. Next up is our Easton branch. Our Easton branch has been closed and remain closed right now. The Easton staff is comprised almost entirely of hourly part-time staff. And so as we went into lockdown, we were not able to keep it open for that reason. We will open the branch back up as we get closer to opening and we can have some of our hourly staff back in the buildings. Until then, Easton does assist the Maine by helping out with book bundles, because they do have a decent children's collection over there. So they help out with book bundles. They help out with holds requests and send them over to the Maine so that we can get those filled. The two full-time staff, our children's librarian and our full-time library assistant who do work at the branch, also spearheaded a library card drive with the schools, with BIS and through BHS, to make sure that all the kids in Burlingame had access to our online resources as we went through this pandemic. Luckily, our children's librarian had been very proactive over the years, and so not that many kids in Burlingame were without a library card already, but we just wanted to make sure that that wasn't the case. So they are supporting us in any way that they can while they've been closed. So moving on to our racial equity team. This is a group of cross-division staff members who have been working on racial equity issues for the last couple of years. What they've been doing is looking at our internal policies and procedures, looking at any sort of potential biases that we may not have noticed, things that can help our community. And so they reached out to the state library and were able to get a grant back in 2019 that then has carried over until this year. It was called the California Cultivating Race, Equity, and Inclusion Grant. And so with this grant, they were able to provide a racial equity action plan. And as I said, it's looking at our policies, looking at our procedures, working it out with our board of trustees. Our board of trustees are the ones that sign off on library policy. And they also do a lot of staff training, so that staff are well-versed in potential biases that we don't want to step in. And this past year, back in November and December, they were instrumental with the United Against Hate Week, as they were the year before. And so they continue to help us in this area, and we will definitely see more good things out of them in the future. And lastly, administration, which are the staff in the building that report directly to me. So including myself, I reach out, I work directly with our board of trustees. I work directly with our library foundation. Our library foundation has been particularly hit hard this year during the pandemic because it has definitely limited their fundraising abilities. But thank you to Councilwoman Colson, who helped them get some space there at 240 Lorton with the Dewey Land Corporation, I believe is what their title is. So that has helped tremendously with the foundation able to sell, gather donations and sell some books. I have also been reaching out to the Pacific Library Partnership, which is another umbrella group organization of Bay Area libraries that Burlingame Library belongs to, reaching out to them and to our library directors in San Mateo County. We're all trying to stay on the same page. We're learning from each other because everybody's trying different things and then reporting out. We talk about, possible openings, possible closures, just learning from each other and doing things as a group so that no one library feels like they're doing this all on their own. The state library has really stepped up to help us during this time and has really reached out to libraries to support us in any way they can, which has been great. They are starting to provide a fair amount of grants, which we will definitely be taking advantage of. And so working with these different organizations in the future is going to be really important as we go into an economic downturn. Also under administration is our library outreach. We have an outreach coordinator who has been working with retirement centers such as the Truesdale and Sterling Court, and there's another, sorry, I'm blanking on, Sisters of Mercy, the Marian Oaks Convent. And so we provide books and materials to these organizations so that they can feel safe not having to venture out, finding stuff to read or keep them occupied. We also provide outreach services to people that are homebound and that may still live at home, but haven't the support from family members or whatever. So we're taking care of that as best we can. Our admin staff are working hard, paying the bills, keeping the lights on, keeping things moving. Our poor Fika Cafe has not been open since we closed. We do keep in contact with the owners of the cafe, and they're doing fine. They are still with us as far as I know, and they are, when I say with us, sorry, I mean that in a fiscal sense. And they are chomping at the bit to get back into the library and open up the cafe whenever that may be. So that's it for my presentation. I know that was a lot of information in a very short period of time. If you have any questions, comments, rebuttals, feel free.
Thank you very much, Brad, for that presentation. Those numbers are really impressive. And so your employees have been quite busy during this COVID pandemic. I would like to know, if possible, if you can maybe put those stats together and we can get it in the e-news. I think the community really needs to know what you have done this past year. Like I said, it's amazing what your staff has been able to do under these conditions.
I think that's a great idea. I would be happy to do that.
Great, thank you so much. Is there anyone else who would like to make any comments or have any questions? Councilmember Coulson, followed by Councilmember Beach.
Thank you. Brad, I just wanted to, you forgot to mention, I think this is really important, that when we had guests out at the hotel, when some of our homeless population was moved to the hotels out on the Bayfront, your staff, some cities delivered other things to those people and those guests. Your staff put books and information for services and put amazing packets together and then took them out to our hotel guests. And you didn't mention that, and I thought it was so touching and moving and heartwarming just to see, you know, the support that Burlingame gave to more transient guests. And you got, I think, got them library cards, and you got that all set up. So I just wanted to mention that because it was really critical and really important. It came at a time, I think, Councilman, and also you didn't mention the work you guys did around the Burlingame Cares cards and getting those set up and getting those delivered. And those were all delivered out from the library. Your staff organized them. Your staff got that all going, figured out the logistics on it. I know Councilman Brownrigg and I spent a full 2 weeks delivering them to community members who had heartfelt thanks for that. So, and just a quick note on the Fika Cafe. Gada and Suleiman have been incredibly gracious and cooking for the San Mateo Boys and Girls Club every Friday for all the volunteers that come to give the food drive out every Friday from 9 to 12. And then they have been on, maybe not every Friday, but on many, many occasions, they have been bringing over food and delivering it to the volunteers and to all the people that work there. So again, they are just a perfect example of what amazing people we have that live here in Burlingame and the work they do. And I know they're very excited to come back to the library, but their cooking talents are not being wasted. They are graciously and generously providing food in ways that matter a lot to people in our community.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Colson, for reminding me all of that. You know, I as I was making my presentation, if I had included everything that my staff have been doing over the last year, we'd be here all night and the city manager would probably fire me. So I had to make some cuts somewhere, but thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Councilmember Colson, Councilmember Beach, and then followed by Vice Mayor Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I echo your praise of the library and Councilmember Colson's praise. It's just amazing job. Brad, just amazing to you and your staff. 2 questions for you. I know many of us are concerned about the digital divide, particularly kids that may not have access to wireless. It's great to see the hotspots going out, and then digital divide with maybe folks that are isolated that didn't have internet, whether it's elderly or others. Can you speak a little bit to that, about the need? I know I spoke to the superintendent early on in COVID, and it seemed, at least her impression was that kids were generally covered, but have you seen a need from students particularly and other folks? And then the second question I had was about, you talked about access, basically everything that the library continues to have access to the community, the collection and everything else. What about those magnificent like printers and things and other resources and digital sources? Are there ways that community members can get to those in a safe, COVID safe way, or are those really off limits at this point? Thank you, because I've had constituents ask me about those.
Thank you, Councilman Beach. So to my best knowledge, I think the students are covered. I think the school system, I think BIS and I think BHS, I think they have done an awesome job for the kids of Burlingame. And so they are covered with laptops, and they are covered with hotspots. We reached out to them in the beginning and said, you know, can we help you in any way? And they were like, they said, sit fast, we'll contact you if we need you, but they haven't. And so I'm assuming that they are good. And then as for the tech side, so our 3D printers, we have those are still available for patron usage, just not in person. They can go onto our website, and they can still send files to our staff members and have things printed and pick them up at our curbside service. So that is still available. The other stuff like the like photo scanning and things like that, that, we could work something out. We haven't had that many requests for that. That one is, it's a little bit tricky. It wasn't, we'd have to look into those. I think it would be doable. They just wouldn't be, I think patrons would have to trust us to do it for them.
So they could always call you. They could call you
They
if
can always call us.
constituents have specific questions, but there might be ways around it. That's awesome
Yeah.
to know. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Sorry, did I answer your questions?
It sure did. And thanks for easing my mind on the issue for the students. I just wanted to double check on that. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say thank you, Director McCauley, for the presentation and for a wonderful job that you're doing under these crazy times. To me, it just blows me away to see the way that your staff has gone out of their way to reach constituents in a different way. And I hope there's big lessons that we learn moving forward to use technology to reach our citizens. But thank you for everything, and look forward to a great end of this year.
Councilmember Brownrigg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I'm not going to repeat the praise because it might begin to go to your head, Mr. McCauley. But I will really say how much, the whole community appreciates you guys bringing the community together. So I'm going to ask the question that's on everyone's mind. When are we going to be able to get back inside those beautiful buildings? And I know it's speculative, but what do you think?
Yeah, I was wondering when that question was going to come, and I knew it was going to. That's a really good question. My best guess, I would say not. So the other library directors and I in the San Mateo County, we meet every other week to go over those types of questions. The last time we met, most library directors felt like, because of the way we were heading with the increase in numbers, the slow rollout of the vaccine, the second and third types of virus mutations that are coming out, most library directors are thinking May or June at the earliest, and and even that's just like that's a really pie in the sky guess. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm hoping that we can open up as soon as the summer, but we'll know more as we go along.
Thank you. And of course, just to make it clear to the public, it's not our call. But thank you, Mr. McCauley. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. A great job by all of you. So I look forward to seeing a write-up in the e-news in the near future.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right, on that note, we will move to public comments. Members of the public may speak about any item that's not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to suggest an item for a future council agenda may do so during this public comment period. The Ralph M. Brown Act prohibits the city council from acting on any matter that is not on the agenda. So Megan, do we have any comments from the public that you received?
We do not.
Okay, is there anyone from the public that would like to speak right now? Please raise your hand. Okay, on that note, I don't see anyone. So we will move on to the approval of the consent calendar. Is there any of my colleagues that would like to pull something from the agenda? The consent calendar, I should say. Vice Mayor Ortiz.
See if I can unmute myself. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to pull item 8A, the meeting minutes, since I was not present. I think I'll need to abstain on that one.
Okay, so you're just pulling it to abstain.
Correct.
Okay. Councilmember Coulson.
Item 8D, which is the approval of a revised urban forest management plan, please.
Okay, very good. All right. Is there anyone from the public that would like to pull something off the consent calendar?
I received requests for 8D, but Councilmember Coulson already pulled it.
Okay, very good. So let's go with, first of all, Councilmember Brownrigg.
I was just going to make a motion, Madam Mayor, but perhaps you wanted to do something else.
Yes, so actually, let's start with just item 8A first. And do a roll call on that, please. Since we have one council member or vice mayor has to abstain.
Madam Mayor, since it was pulled, we should still open public comment on that.
Oh, okay. Thank you, city attorney. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on item 8A? And to our city clerk, is there anyone from the public that sent you correspondence?
There's none.
Okay, then on that note, is there a council member that would like to make a motion?
So moved. Move to approve item 8A.
Second.
Okay, so motion made by Council Member Beach, seconded by Council Member Brownrigg. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Beach,
Yes.
Councilmember Coulson,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ortiz,
Abstain.
Mayor O'Brien.
Yes, so the motion passes at a 4-0-1 with abstention from Vice Mayor Ortiz. All right, so then may I have someone make a motion for items 8B and C? Or actually,
And-
sorry, I need to go through the public first.
And E, Madam.
No, I don't. Okay.
B, C, and E.
Yeah.
Move to approve items 8, B, C, and E.
And E. Mm-hmm.
Second.
Okay, so motion made by Vice Mayor Ortiz, seconded by Council Member Brownrigg. Can we have a roll call? Megan, please.
Councilmember Beach,
Yes.
Councilmember Coulson,
Yes.
Councilmember Brownrigg,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ortiz,
Yes.
Mayor O'Brien.
Yes, so motion passes 5-0. Now we'll go on to item 8D, which is the approval of the revised urban forest management plan. Councilmember Coulson pulled this off, and it sounds like someone from the public wanted this pulled off too.
Thank you. My comments are really just some little technical additions or things I noticed that I wanted to review quickly. The first one is just a note on page 14 of the report under health and safety benefits. There's these are referring back to some reference materials that are listed right above this, but there's a note 6 which says neighborhoods and homes that are barren have shown to have a greater incidence of violence in and out of the home than their greener counterparts. Trees and landscaping help to reduce the level of fear. And I just, that whole sentence just sort of sat funny with me. And I was okay with it. I really just didn't like this. Trees and landscaping help to reduce the level of fear. I just don't know how you quantify that and you say that. So I was just proposing we just strike that last sentence out. So that's one, and then people can comment quickly here. The second comment I had is on chapter 3, restorative actions. That chapter focused on views. So if somebody's tree was obscuring someone's view, there was a process by which you could arbitrate that. But in reality, in addition to views, I think that most of the tree conversations in the city are neighbor to neighbor. Many of them are, at least. I know I work with my neighbor, for example, on a big redwood tree and an oak tree, cutting it back and making sure that they stay healthy. And we do it cooperatively. But in the event that there's a disagreement between neighbors, the urban forest management program is silent on that. And I thought that would be a logical place for people to look. And so maybe there should just be one small paragraph saying that if you have a neighbor to neighbor, the recommendation is that it goes to the Peninsula Conflict Resolution Center and maybe provide the phone number there. And then I had another another comment on page 15, which has to do with 15 and 52, both. There's a reference to routes on our sidewalks, repairs and subcontractors. And so I know that we all received an email from a constituent about tree roots that were being cut by the sidewalk repair people. So I just want to thank our public works and our staff for getting on that and making sure that we stay on that, because we shouldn't be violating our own policy. And I want to make sure we're, I just really appreciate it. And I hope that our staff will meet with new contractors just to keep them informed about that, because we don't lose any trees that way. And then the last comment I had was, I was just hoping that we were going to maybe look at, and I talked to Margaret about this as well, just to refresh a few of those photos in there so that the trees are a little more leafed out. If you look at the photos, there's a lot of barren trees because I think they were just taken. And then maybe on the bottom of the photos, putting down like, eucalyptus on, Easton Drive, or sycamore trees on whatever street those are on. So there's a reference to the type of tree and then just the general location of where the photo was taken. A, so we can make sure we're taking photos from all over the city, and B, just because I think people enjoy knowing where those pretty trees are, and being able to reference in the city, where they might find them. And those were just my comments. Margaret, I don't know if you want to chime in on any of that. You and I had a little discussion today, but I just wanted to bring it to my colleagues so that we could officially get input on that.
They're all easy enough changes if that's the will of the council. We can easily remove that last sentence and add the neighbor to neighbor discussions about tree removal. As far as the pictures go, I would ask that we wait till the trees start leafing out so we can get better pictures. And at that time, we can switch out some of the pictures and then add some of the types of trees, which I think is a great idea. Especially pictures with a single tree, which helps people maybe if they want to choose a tree for their front yard. So that would be all simple enough to do, and we can do the pictures at a later date, but the content now before it gets posted. Would it be helpful just to give a little background to the process and about the Urban Forest Management Plan? If it's okay with Mayor O'Brien?
That is fine with me, Margaret Glomstead.
Yeah, so this actually started quite a while ago in December of 2019. Our Beautification Commission recommended updating the Urban Forest Management Plan to reflect the content of the Solar Rights Act and the Solar Shade Control Act. It was convenient because our goal is to update it every 4 to 5 years. When we were a little bit behind schedule doing that, so this definitely spurred us forward. In the staff report, there is a mistake. It was Commissioners Dennery and Bauer who were leading the charge for us on this update. Commissioner Kirchner was leading the charge on it with some other content about the Solar Rights Act and the Solar Shade Control Act. So they figured out where it would go, and then gave staff suggestions, after reviewing a lot of other cities' plans, ways to make ours better. And while that was happening, staff worked on updating the content to reflect our current processes and forms, and updated industry standards and best practices regarding trees. I think it's important to understand the Urban Forest Management Plan is basically a technical guide to help residents understand the city's interactions basically with trees in Burlingame, like outlining the process and policies. And it's also like a how-to guide for trees. Something that's referenced in the Urban Forest Management Plan is the city ordinance, which is a very different beast than the plan itself. The city ordinance is basically the city's laws on trees. It's the enforcement, or it allows us to enforce the city policies by having that ordinance. So an example would be the ordinance allows us to require a private homeowner with their tree in their backyard have to get a permit for a protected size tree. Without the ordinance, we couldn't do that. So there is a little bit of an interface between two, but the ordinance and our interim city attorney can help clarify it more if I'm bumbling it. But it gives us that authority to have some of those processes in place. And it also allows for an appeals process for the residents. But the urban forest management plan is more that technical guide, the how to, just a lot of good information. And then if you do want to remove a tree, how do you do that? And what's the difference between a city tree and a private tree? There's just so many nuances. And the goal of the urban forest management plan that's before you tonight is to update that, just that booklet, not the city ordinance. So I don't know if anybody has any other questions, but once the commission approved it, it did not look like this document at all. It was a Word document, which was what our old document was. So staff, we did it in-house, updated the plan. We tried to make it mirror our Parks Master Plan. So we're kind of branding the documents that are coming out of Parks and Rec. So it is a similar look to the Parks Master Plan, but it has the urban forest management content in it.
Great, thank you, Margaret. I have a quick question, and actually it's for our interim city attorney. So with the potential changes that Councilmember Colson mentioned, if my colleagues go along with that, is that something that can be changed this evening and we can approve it this evening, or is that something that has to be changed and then come back to us again?
So we can approve it with the condition that those changes are made, as long as the will of the council is to do that. We want to make sure that everyone's on board with those changes, but if so, absolutely just approve it with the condition that those changes be made.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Council members, is there anything you would like to add? And also, do you agree with the 4 changes that Councilmember Colson mentioned this evening?
Councilmember Beach, you had your hand up before me.
I've called on Councilmember Beach.
Oh, sorry.
I think you're muted, Councilmember.
There we go. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate Councilmember Colson's careful reading and Director Glomsted's overview as well. So yeah, no, I in my reading, I missed that line about the violence in the trees. I think that's an excellent suggestion to remove. And the other suggestions you had as well, I concur with Councilmember Colson's suggestions. There was somewhere, I forget which section, the urban forest management guide does reference mediation, but I think you bring up a really good point. There's other places, or the place you mentioned would be a good place to make sure it exists there, to remind people that mediation is a great option, and we do have that ability within the city. And Director Glomsted, you read my mind. One of my questions was just to help the community understand the difference between the ordinance and the management plan, and I think you did a great job explaining that the ordinance, we still have work to do on that, and that's on our work plan. It's kind of got the teeth and the law behind how we manage trees and such, but that's an important distinction. So thank you for that, and just huge praise to staff I thought the document was very readable. It was attractive. It was a much more user-friendly document, a big improvement than our last one. And I thank you for the extra effort and the user-friendly, well-organized manner it was put together. So congratulations to both staff and the Beautification Commission for their work on it.
Thank you, Councilmember Beach. Councilmember Browning.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also want to thank my colleague, Councilman Colson, for the close reading and also the expertise she brings to this particular project, from both serving on Park and Rec and also serving at Filoli. So we are lucky to have that kind of expertise. And I endorse the changes. I just wanted to share, since this subject came up, there was a point professionally where I was working in Nairobi to restore, with others obviously, to restore an old city park. And our partners there called on data that they had from Cairo, which showed that a major city park in the middle of the city, when it was taken offline due to extensive repairs they had to do, the incidence of domestic violence and mental anguish went up appreciably in the neighborhoods near the park. In other words, when it was offline, unhealthy activity increased. And I do think, I really do believe in the importance of parks, and I know you do too. I understand the notion of how do you quantify fear, but there really is data that shows parks that are available and accessible make people healthier. So kudos and thank you for that.
Vice Mayor Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to, thank you again to Councilmember Coulson for her close reading. I love the idea of having the picture of the trees with the species and location. I think that's a great point. I agree with all the other add-ons, and I'm in favor of going forward.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Ortiz. On that note, to our city clerk, did you get any comments from the public?
I did. The first one comes from Mike Ritzma. He states, this comment is specific to root trimming that occurs during sidewalk replacement projects. We lost a 70-year-old magnolia during a previous city sidewalk project on Benito, one of two we had at the time. The roots of this tree were trimmed close to the trunk, even though we had paid our own contractor to put in forms that bent around the tree. And I contacted the manager of the project several times to ensure the roots would be spared. Our neighbors across the street lost one of the two magnolias they had during the same project. This time we were assured by the construction company that they would not trim any root thicker than 3 inches. As they began work late last week, we challenged the crew's judgment on the only remaining sidewalks side root on our remaining magnolia, to no avail. After it was cut, a measurement showed that it was nearly 4.5 inches in diameter. Later, we learned, thanks to city engineer Victor Vong, that the city standard is actually 2 inches. Clearly, this policy needs to be better enforced when contractors are briefed. Our thanks to Victor, Gina Borba, Bob Disco, and Mayor or Councilmember Coulson for their assistance in this matter. And then we also received a comment from Jennifer Pfaff. She said, I wanted to compliment the urban forest document revision. I wanted to say that I think it is really attractive and very well done, pulling together lots of different topics, but in a very easy to digest manner. Many thanks to Margaret and Bob, all the staff and beautification commissioners who were involved. And that is it.
Great, thank you very much to the city clerk. It sounds like all my colleagues are on board with the changes that Councilmember Coulson proposed. So I just kind of want to double check, maybe with nods of heads before. Okay, great. In regard to the public comments that were received, I do agree. Contractors need to be very careful and abide by our rules and regulations, and there should be penalties to enforce. And I think that's something we may touch upon later on this evening when we're talking about item 10B, discussion of procedures regarding unauthorized construction demolition. I think that might be something, since we will be talking about fees, I'm not sure if that's something we can lump into that. But if not, I'm hoping maybe we could talk about it future agenda if we can't do it this evening. So on that note, can I have someone make a motion on this item 8D, please?
Motion to approve item 8D with the council consensus on the revisions.
Councilmember Coulson, just want to make sure the revisions we're talking about are the revised language about fear in barren areas, adding mediation language, and adding new pictures when foliage returns?
Yes, and the new pictures when foliage returns and documenting the location and the species of the tree.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, so the motion was made by Councilmember Coulson, seconded by Vice Mayor Ortiz. May we have a roll call, please, Megan?
Councilmember Beach,
Yes.
Councilmember Coulson,
Yes.
Councilmember Brownrigg,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ortiz,
Yes.
Mayor O'Brien.
Yes. So item 8D passes on a 5-0 vote. Thank you. Moving on to item number 9, we do not have any public hearings this evening, so we will go on to item 10A, staff reports and communications. So we will start with item 10A, which is city council direction regarding the renaming of a 400-foot section of the former Airport Boulevard adjacent to the Newtown Hotel parcel, Burlingame Point, and Anza Fisherman's Park. And we will have our Public Works Director, Mr. Martuza, please. Oh, I don't think we can hear you.
Actually, if I may, this is Martin Kwan, Senior Civil Engineer. I will be doing the presentation for the staff report.
Okay, very good, Mr. Kwan. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor O'Brien, members of the council. If I may ask the city clerk to pull up the presentation. Thanks, Megan. Before you tonight is a staff report on renaming a 400-foot section of the former Airport Boulevard that was part of the public improvements for the Burlingame Point project at 300 Airport Boulevard. The project was approved by council on December 7th, 2020 for the public improvements that included the realignment of Airport Boulevard, a new Burlingame Point pump station, a pedestrian bridge over Sanchez Channel, and a bay trail improvements along the shorelines. Next slide, please. This aerial shows the construction of the realignment of Airport Boulevard that meanders through the project site that encompassed 4 office buildings, a parking structure, and amenities buildings on the 18-acre site. You can see the old Airport Boulevard that wrapped around the project site. Next slide, please. The 400-foot section of the former Airport Boulevard that remains is shown outlined in yellow. This is a public street that provides access to the Newtown parcel just to the north, Anza Fisherman's Park, Burlingame Point, and the new Bay Trail improvements. In order to provide clear wayfinding and efficient emergency response to the affected parcels, staff is seeking input from council to rename this section of the street. Next slide, please. A list of possible names are Fisherman's Park Lane or Way in honor of the public park that terminates at the dead-end street, Airport Lane or Way that would be symbolic for a short section of Airport Boulevard, Bay Trail Lane or Way that would signify public parking and access to the Bay Trail. And last but not forgotten, Burlingame Drive-In Lane or Way to pay tribute to and remind Burlingame residents of the former drive-in theater that was located at the now Burlingame Point location. Per the Municipal Code section 12.17.008, council may select from the list or provide a different suggestion. Once staff receives council's direction, staff will schedule a public hearing the following month to adopt the new street name and notify the impacted parcel owners. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kwan, for that presentation. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Kwan? If not, through our city clerk, anyone from the public?
Yes, we do have one. This is from Manito Velasco. He says, thanks for agendizing the naming of the old airport stub. Naming that stub is helpful as it could set the boundary for the new speed limit for this section of airport. You may know that the legal speed limit on airport still stands at 35 miles per hour, despite the bends and people nature of the road. Even though there are small 15 mile per hour black on yellow signs, they are only advisory and not enforceable. 35 miles per hour is still the legal speed limit. I hope you will consider lowering the speed limit here. Even with the 25 or lower speed, the curves and the unexpected speed table mid-block hidden by the curves might cause drivers to go out of control. It will be interesting to see what happens when all the cones and construction setup are removed and the signals go green. Hopefully drivers or police or fire or other emergency responders don't scrape or careen or lose control if they are surprised. Liability would be on the city. Lastly, please reconsider the dangerous intersection of Beach and Airport. More and more bikes and walkers and families are crossing those crosswalks unprotected and hidden by the curb. There's no flashing crosswalk like the other crossings. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Is there anyone else from the public? I don't see anyone's hands raised. So I will go back to my colleagues for discussion. So who would like to start? Councilmember Brownrigg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have to say this is one of the most fun agenda items I remember in quite a long time. So thank you, Public Works, for giving us this option. And I will just say, I'll just kick it off. I like the nod to the old drive-in. So for me, old drive-in way sounds great to me, and I like the echo to the past. So I don't really care where we come down on this, but I appreciate having the option to weigh in on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Brownrigg. Vice Mayor Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have to agree with Councilmember Brownrigg. I think the nod to the drive-in is a good one. I would maybe even keep it shorter, just call it drive-in way, and just keep it short and sweet. So, but I would be in favor of something in that area.
Councilmember Beach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do like drive-in way. I could go along with that. I also really like Bay Trail Way. I think Bay Trail is a beloved asset, and having a lane that's named after it will, as described in the staff report, it can really draw people down there and realize what great access we have down here, which is a huge public benefit. So I like both of those two. There's one I don't like, but nobody's brought that up yet, so I'll just leave it at that. I could go along with either of those two very happily.
Councilmember Coulson.
I too can go along with either. I also leaned toward Bay Trail Way or Bay Trail Lane. Interestingly, I noticed on Nextdoor when there was a lot of complaining going on about the skateboarding out there, that everybody was calling it Bay Trail Lane. You know, they had already named it kind of in Nextdoor, and it was what people and the location people understood. And I'm okay with drive-in too. I just laughed because when I said something about a drive-in, my kids looked at me like, what was I talking about? They had no idea. The only thing I had to do is I had to pack them up in the car and take them down to one of Margaret's drive-in nights at the Murray Golf Center so I could explain to them what that was. They were like, what? We don't get this.
Thank you, Councilmember Coulson. So that will come back to me. I actually liked the Bay Trail Lane just because we're always talking about the Bay Trail. We're encouraging people to utilize, open space. And, I do like the Burlingame Drive-In, but I actually was kind of thinking about what Councilmember Coulson brought up, was that many people are going to go, why is it the Burlingame Drive-In? They won't know because they just don't know. They don't know the history. So I would lean more toward the Bay Trail Lane. So
I'm fine with that.
Are you okay, Councilmember Brownrigg?
Whatever.
To Public Works for this presentation, and like as Councilmember Brownrigg said, this was kind of fun. So
Maybe it's a hybrid. Maybe it's Bay Trail Old Drive-In.
Well, I do think
want
it.
a small sign.
That's what I'm thinking.
I think that's right, actually. I think we should, at our expense, probably not the projects, they're long gone, but we should put up a plaque that reminds people that there used to be a drive-in and what the heck a drive-in was. But we can do that on Bay Trail Lane, so.
I think that's a good idea. Something we can discuss futuristically, definitely. Because we do want to keep history. All right, so on that note, I think we can move forward to a motion because it sounds like there is a consensus.
Madam Mayor, move to recommend, oh, wait, did we decide Bay Trail Way or Lane? I'm sort of ambivalent.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was Bay Trail Lane.
Is that,
Do I
Works.
stand
That's fine.
corrected or were you okay with that?
I'm fine with Lane.
I'm fine with it. Councilmember Coulson, do you have a?
Lane's good. Lane signifies like a smaller, more intimate
Small
street.
portion. Mhm.
Sure. So move to approve naming this section of Bay Trail Lane.
Madam Mayor, I'm not sure if we actually need a motion on this one. Director Martuza can correct me if I'm wrong, but the direction is just going to be to set this name and then we're going to bring it back for a public hearing so the public will comment.
Oh,
Now
okay.
that we have the direction, it's per the code, which is kind of an odd procedure, but complies with the state law.
All right, very good. I jumped the gun a little bit there, so.
It's great. Motions are great.
Thank you.
I
All
agree with
right.
the plaque too. I think we should see if we can figure out work with the Historic Society and Ms. Pfaff to see if we can't find something that we could, a picture, a photograph or something we could use to commemorate it.
That sounds like a good idea. To our director, Mr. Martuza, I'm not sure if we can hear you now again, but was there anything you wanted to say? No, okay, so his sound is still not. Okay.
We can't hear you, Sayed, but we know you're supportive.
Very good. Thank you very much to our Public Works Department. We will move then to our next agenda item, item 10B, which is the discussion of procedures regarding unauthorized construction and demolition. And do we have Director Kevin Gardner? Yes, we do. So you want to do this staff report, please?
Certainly. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. In recent months, the Community Development Department and Code Enforcement have encountered a number of instances of building construction and demolition that have been initiated without the benefit of building or planning permits. The city has generally, in the past, allowed offenders to pursue corrective action or cure the violation by obtaining the necessary permits. And during that time, basically everything's kind of on hold, but the structures are allowed to stay in place while the applicant goes through the process. This does create issues, particularly for neighbors who are frustrated that construction has been initiated without a proper notifications or documentation, and maybe wondering how these structures have just started to appear without the proper permits. This is a matter that staff has been discussing amongst ourselves for some time, typically when there's a violation, and we ask, is there something the city should be doing more as a deterrent? It has been brought forward at this particular time with a more recent case where there were questions that have come up. So we thought that this would be the right opportunity to receive guidance from the City Council, particularly from a kind of policy and procedural perspective. That said, this discussion is not about a specific project or a specific party. It is a recurring matter, and while the vast majority of the construction follows the correct permitting procedures, the instances can be very frustrating for the neighbors, for the Planning Commission, for staff, for everybody involved. So one of the questions we want to ask the City Council is whether unauthorized structures should be allowed to remain while the applicant pursues the relevant permits, or should the city embark on a more aggressive approach, such as requiring the removal of such structures prior to initiating a permitting process. Second question is whether to establish a more aggressive penalty structure, such as the administrative provisions that are described in the staff report, and those can be imposed on a daily basis. So although they could be, relatively modest initially, if it's an ongoing issue, those could add up. Staff does not have a proposal per se. We wanted to, but we can research opinions if given direction from the council. Alternatively, the status quo of focusing primarily on the permitting process could still continue, but we did want confirmation for that direction if that is the preference, and then we know that going forward. So as mentioned, this is something that has been discussed on the staff level, including with the interim city attorney and the city manager. So this, with this overview, any of us are available for questions.
Great, thank you, Director Gardner. I just wanted to bring up that I actually had a conversation with Director Gardner on this issue. I have received multiple phone calls in regard to projects that may not have followed our rules and regulations that the City of Burlingame has set, and that is why it's on the agenda. So I first wanted to start out to see if any of my colleagues have questions before I open it up to public comment. Councilmember Beach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just sort of a context question for Director Gardner. Can you give us a sense of how widespread these violations are? Are they few and far between? Is it, you know, just a small, like a handful every year, or is it growing?
It is a handful. So, you know, one of the questions we've asked is, do you create a rule for the few violators when everybody else is behaving? But then on the other hand, if everyone's behaving, then they're not going to be impacted by new rules. What I will say is the few and far between do create a lot of kind of ruckus in terms of the follow-up that's required for staff, and then it sounds as though council members also will be contacted as well. So the few examples where this does occur do seem to create a disproportionate amount of staff follow-up in you know, trying to remedy the situation and determine what's the best approach and how to bring back into compliance, where perhaps a deterrent could help reduce some of that.
All right, thank you for that clarification.
Vice Mayor Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Director Gardner, the question I have is, so is the idea that we're creating the demolition requirement as a punitive measure to discourage people from doing this in the future? Or, and then the fining would also include that. So, you know, I'm kind of sitting on both sides. Like if somebody's doing it, they're not really sure what they were supposed to do, and we're requiring them to tear down what we're going to give them a permit to build in a few minutes. It seems a little odd, but I get it if it's punitive to avoid having people do it in the future. So I'm just kind of curious, what is the idea?
So there is, yeah, it's meant to be whether it's punitive, deterrent, what have you, in that I think if people knew that they couldn't start a project and then say, okay, let's go for a permit, they might think twice about starting that project without the permit. It also, although it's, you know, certainly what, you know, for example, if it's the planning commission or the building department, they can say, you know, the fact that you've started the structure isn't going to influence the decision, but it does create an odd situation where a structure has started, and then, you know, then it puts either the planning commission or staff in the position of, you know, being the bad guy, so to speak, in terms of saying, well, now you have to tear this out because, you know, if what's approved is not what was originally started. So it just creates kind of an unhelpful dynamic where you're kind of looking, the approval is sort of through the filter of something that's already been started, and that could seem unfair.
And walk me through it. Who would make the determination? I mean, does that go to the planning commission for them to determine that that's not according to plans or according to what's approved, and then they would require the demolition?
It does depend on the nature of the permit. So this does come to the planning commission from time to time, where in that case, it's often changes that are made to a project in the field. And then sometimes it's not till the very end, right before it's ready to be final, where then the project comes forward and says, we'd like approval after the fact. And it does put the planning commission in a bad position, because they, you know, if they don't like those changes and said that this isn't something we would have approved in the first place, they're put in the position of them saying, you know, tear off the siding or take down the dormer or what have you. And it's not a pleasant conversation that anybody would really want to have.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Councilman Brownrigg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm unfamiliar with whatever project it is that teed this off, but I understand that this is a generic discussion. Whenever I hear the words government and punitive used in the same sentence, I get a little uncomfortable. So I'm probably reluctant to go down that road. But if we're going to use the argument that it's a deterrent, that implies that we think there are a lot of people who are intentionally doing this. And I guess, and I realize this is an unfair question, Mr. Gardner, but roughly speaking, of those events that, happen year to year, how many times would you say it's sort of just homeowner ignorance about building and permits, and how often is it somebody trying to pull a fast one on the city?
I'd say there are a lot of them where it is just somebody unfamiliar, and that's where it gets a little tricky when it adds the sort of subjectivity. But there have been some instances where it is a repeat offender, and we ask ourselves, should they have known better, particularly if they know the rules, they've worked in Burlingame before, and this has happened again. And that can occur whether it's back to the planning commission and they see yet again another request from the same, or if it's a stop work order for somebody who has had a stop work order within the same year and should know. So again, it's probably it's a small percentage of repeat offenders, but they do then end up taking a disproportionate amount of staff time in terms of the follow-up and all the kind of aggravation that is entailed.
So if I could just make a quick comment, and then I'll pass the mic to Councilmember Ortiz's point. If we decide to increase penalties, personally, I would prefer there to be financial penalties than deconstruction, because deconstruction of something that is then going to be reconstructed is just a waste of materials and on the environment. And that's not going to sit well with me, but I look forward to the rest of the conversation.
And if I can jump in real quick too, tonight's discussion is just to see council's direction on where they would like us to look at potential remedies. So it's not that we're trying to find a working remedy tonight. In fact, there are ways, perhaps adding remedies like demolition to the repertoire of the building official or to people who want to use it, and we can use it in certain instances. So there are not quite so severe options that are available too. And if that's something that council would like us to explore, we can certainly explore that. I'll also add the financial penalties. There are statutory limits on what we can and can't do in terms of financial penalties. Those typically fall on the city attorney's office and code enforcement. Right now, through ordinance, our maximum penalty is only $500 per day for a continuing violation. There is an opportunity to go up higher for building and safety code violations, but it's still going to be capped somewhere around 1,000 or a little bit more than that per day. And that's typically at the prosecutorial discretion of the city attorney's office. So the city attorney would be the one determining whether there was a violation of that code. Just to give it a little context, and sorry to throw the attorney talk in the middle of the discussion.
Thank you to our city attorney. Councilmember Coulson.
Thank you. I'm wondering if there would be a way possibly to bifurcate sort of homeowners who maybe remodel a bathroom and don't realize that they needed a permit versus, say, a professional contractor who's got a license, a business license here, and repeatedly is, doing work without permits. And, and to me, if you can't comply with our laws, then we should revoke your business license and you shouldn't be able to do business in Burlingame. And I don't know how we can enforce that, but I'm not as worried about the individual homeowner and, maybe their out of town contractor or brother-in-law or whoever's doing the work for them messing up, and we go in and help them fix it. And they do it and they comply and they're apologetic and contrite and the whole thing. I am worried about the contractor that is blatantly, time and time again, demolitioning or building something that is, or has a stop work order and is violating it. That's my bigger concern. And I just don't know, could we bifurcate those two or give discretion?
City Attorney, do you want to answer that, or Director Gardner?
I can certainly take a stab at it, and Director Gardner can add his expertise after. For the public awareness and for council's knowledge, the contractors are also governed by the Contractor State License Board, much like I am governed by the California State Bar. So they do have rules and regulations that they are required to follow, and if they don't follow them, they can get pretty severe civil penalties from that licensing board themselves. We also, Councilmember Colson mentioned, if they violate a stop work order, there are options available at my office where we can go after court orders and injunctions that would have much more severe penalties than what we have in our city ordinances as well. So that's another option that we can do in the most severe cases. Obviously, that's not something we like to do in smaller cases where it can be remedied with other issues. But if someone's violating a stop work order, that's something much more severe. So that is also something at our disposal that we can use. I'll let Director Gardner piggyback on that with anything he knows from his expertise as well, but wanted to make sure I clarified, we are not the only governing body for these contractors. And if the contractors are the worry, there are other avenues, especially for private citizens who know that they're violating their permit. They can report a violation to that licensing board as well.
Thank you. I just add, if it is the direction of the council, and as interim city attorney Spansdale mentioned, we're looking for direction, not necessarily a solution tonight. Should direction be some sort of bifurcation type structure, we can look at the mechanics of that. And because I think that is, it's a good point that would somebody have known or not? And it's a little hard to determine, but it does seem to get to the fairness of whether it's a repeat violator or someone that just is new to construction and wouldn't have known the difference.
And Councilmember Colson, to your point, there also is a procedure for revoking business licenses, and that's something staff could certainly explore and come back and provide a report on if council directs that is something they would like explored.
I think those are, if a contractor is violating their permits and demoing things without permits or whatever they're doing, the homeowner may not be sophisticated enough to understand. And so a lot of punitive, it's already expensive enough here to put a lot of punitive things on the homeowner. I'm a little worried about. But if the contractor is repeatedly violating, I would be all in favor of using more, some of these other alternatives to, make sure that in future they comply with their, with the mandates in the law. I think that the efficacy around that is a lot more than it is maybe even around. I mean, if you build something that's not to code and isn't ever going to be to code, then you clearly have to take it down and build it to code. That's no discussion. So, I think there's some nuances here, and I just like to give the staff some direction and then some width and bandwidth, and then just to also make sure that whatever we do, everybody has to be treated fairly and equally.
Mayor, if I could.
Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You know what? I have a thought because I kind of see where you're going, Councilmember Colson. So my thought was we could do a warning system. Somebody gets a warning for the first offense, and then after that, there is no mercy. And that way that takes care of the repeat offenders, but also protects the one-off homeowner who didn't know what they were doing. So again, we set it up, one warning, and within 5 years of that warning, if you repeat, you must tear it down and you're subject to the highest penalties.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Ortiz. I think, there's going to be multiple probably suggestions from my colleagues. I just want to make a comment before I open it up to public comment. Since I did talk with the community director on putting this on the agenda. I do think we have to look at this maybe in a tiered system, homeowner and contractor, because contractors should know the rules and regulations that the city sets through the planning and building department. I can understand, the possible mistakes that homeowners may make because this is not their area of expertise. And so I'm sure we'll discuss this after public comment, but I do look at those two categories a little bit differently. I also look at repeat offenders as there's absolutely no excuse. Thirdly, especially if we look at contractors and or developers, to me, if it is something that is blatant, I don't want to send the message of, well, we'll do the mistake and ask for the forgiveness later. I think that's a dangerous precedent. And I do think it hits harder making them demolish it than it is to give a fee, because the fee is not that high. And so I could potentially see developers or contractors say, oh, we prefer the fee, but if you actually make them demolish it, then hopefully they will think twice futuristically that it won't happen again. So those are my comments for right now. But I would like to open it up to public comment. So City Clerk, Megan, have you received any emails?
I received a Zoom chat. It says, slap the contractors with a fine and start over. Tear down what they constructed without the permit. Contractors will continue bad behavior if something isn't done.
Now, can I open it up if someone raises their hand? Okay. So is there anyone in the public that would like to speak? You will need to raise your hand. Okay, I see no one raising their hand. Okay, so I will close then the public comment section. So how would we like to proceed? I think there's maybe the general question I can throw out there. Do we want to look at this in two different categories, contractor and homeowner? Does anyone have a comment on that?
Are we allowed to make that kind of distinction legally? I always thought we kind of had to treat everybody the same.
I mean, certainly something we can look into. I mean, there can be an intentional element of what's baked into an ordinance as well. So we could go after an intentional violation, and that's probably going to target contractors a lot more because they're going to have the requisite knowledge, and we can prove that intentional. But again, that doesn't give, that puts it in staff's hands again to determine and prove what an intentional versus non-intentional violation is. But that's not something that we're afraid of. That's something that we do on an everyday basis when we do code enforcement anyway.
So my question to you, to our city attorney then is, if a person has been given a warning and still moves forward, wouldn't you think does that meet the definition of intentional?
In most instances it would. I don't want to make a categorical universal yes it does, because there could be underlying circumstances where they do one violation and then a separate violation that's slightly different, and they may argue they didn't know. But I think contractors are always going to be held to a higher standard. It's, a reasonable contractor standard versus a reasonable homeowner standard, and they're going to have that idea. There's also the ability, and Director Gardner might correct me if I'm wrong on this, but there may be other incentives in terms of stop work orders on other issues. And as Councilmember Colson said, if there's a contractor who has multiple projects in the city, there are ways to go after a business license that wouldn't be applicable to a homeowner, because a homeowner is not going to be having a business license with the city. So that would be another way that you could contract, or you could target a contractor who's doing multiple bad projects throughout the city instead of targeting homeowners. But again, I apologize. I do not know every avenue that can be done on this one, but after direction, we'll definitely do our research and come back to you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Beach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be brief. I really value the conversation and the thoughtfulness that the ideas everybody put out and the public as well. So I would agree that I hope there would be a way that a proposal that comes back to council could have a little difference of the way we treat contractor violations versus individual homeowners. That said, because I am sympathetic that we should give people maybe the benefit of the doubt in certain circumstances, but that said, I really do think that we have to have consequences for people who don't get the proper permits. So I would personally be in favor of not necessarily a warning system, but just have a lesser type consequence, penalty, financial penalty, like a penalty, like a flat fee, as opposed to a daily fee for individual homeowners, and then figure out creative ways to really make it more painful for contractors, because they should know better, as we've said before. And whether that's a more expensive fee or whether that's in other ways, as the city attorney suggested, we could get to that root cause or prevent that from happening. And then a second violation is even more stringent, with a threat of potentially revoking a business license here. I agree with Councilmember Brownrigg. I am not in favor of requiring demolishing unless we need to demolish for code, as Councilmember Colson said. But I would rather force the remedy through a very painful fee structure that would get everybody's attention, or for contractors' threat of removing their ability to do business in the city of Burlingame. The other thing that you mentioned that really concerns me are changes in the field that are made. That feels like people are trying to pull a fast one on the city. So a project is ongoing and someone had the walkway or the deck approved a certain way by the planning commission, or the porch, and then they decide to change it and try to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. My only other thought is I hope we can build a structure in a way that really protects the planning commission, so that if it is something that comes before them as a change, they are not aware that it's already been built, that we protect them from that knowledge if that's possible, so that they don't feel the pressure of neighbors saying, look, we already built it this way and you got to say yes. I don't know how we do that, but that really does concern me. And so I do think homeowners should have some responsibility as well, just maybe not quite as severe as contractors. Thank you.
Councilmember Colson.
Thank you. So I just appreciate having this conversation, and thank you, Mayor O'Brien, for putting this up on the screen, because it's important. The place that this gives me some of the most concern is around historic preservation and the flagrant demolition of historic assets when people know that it's going to potentially result in more work or extensive work, and I've seen that happen as well. If someone starts a demolition and they're pulling their permit that day or something, whatever, I mean, to some degree, like, so the bathroom's getting demolished, and there's, little nuances here and there. But if we woke up one morning and the post office was demolitioned overnight without permits, that raises to an entirely different scale of problem. And, people don't think it happens, but I actually have watched it happen over and over again. So maybe there'd be a way to put a nuance in there around if it's a historic asset or an asset that's been deemed historic, we need to take extra caution or think about how that might work.
Vice Mayor Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a little, we keep talking about how the homeowners were making them out to be innocent and not doing this by mistake. Well, I don't think that in all cases that's correct. And so adding a lot of protections for homeowners who could continually violate the laws doesn't sit right with me. So this is why I go back to the warning. I'll let you get off with one, but now you've been warned and you do it again, then I don't have any patience. So I don't know that I like the two-tier with a contractor versus homeowner. I like it better if you've been warned, you know better, and then we act.
Councilmember Brownrigg.
One comment on Councilman Beach's comments. Having been in that position, and I'm sure Mayor O'Brien was as well, on planning when something comes back to you, it is hard. Actually, we all remember that with the family that had the cement boards on the building, and how it's hard when something's already been built to make them undo it if it's really not that bad. So you're right. I don't think there's a way to protect planning commissioners from it, though. So there is just some things, I guess I'm trying to say, there's some things you can't legislate every single outcome. You have to make room for people to use judgment and discretion. And then I would, I guess this is more by way of a question, but my memory is we did go down the route. We all agree with Councilwoman Coulson that unauthorized demolition is really a problem. But I have the memory that we put much more painful penalties in place for unauthorized demolition than we have for unauthorized construction. And if we don't, I would certainly be more in favor of unauthorized demolition penalties, because that you can't repair, to Councilman Coulson's point. So maybe when it comes back, we could be reminded about that with the staff report.
Thank you, Councilmember Brownrigg. So we have a few different things going on here. So there is the question of homeowner and contractor. Do you treat them the same, or do you treat them differently? And I guess this is a question to the city attorney. I understand actually where Vice Mayor Ortiz is coming from. Why would you treat them differently, per se? But for most homeowners, they'll do something once. They're not building multiple homes. Usually it's probably a one-time thing versus multiple times. So if you give them one warning, well, what good is that going to do if they're not going to build again? So, is there a way that you kind of categorize this by blatancy and disregard versus an actually, an honest mistake? So that's kind of one category. The second category is changes in the field. Sometimes in reality, the changes do need to be made. And so I don't necessarily have an issue if they were minor changes and the building official, let's say, was notified, or someone from planning was notified, and the contractor says, look, we weren't expecting this scenario. This may change the way we have to build this. Because I prefer honesty and working with the planning and or building. And can we make it up to the discretion of the building inspector or someone that goes out for planning that's inspecting? So that's another kind of category that I'm seeing here. And then the third, well, it could be four categories. The third could be, I like the business license component to it. That if there are multiple issues with a particular contractor / developer, can that be revoked from building in Burlingame futuristically? And then there is the, unauthorized demolition. Correct, I agree with Councilmember Brownrigg. I think we have stricter rules for that. But in regards to unauthorized construction, I think there could be different levels, because if someone blatantly builds something without a permit or has not gone in front of a planning commission, I cannot see why we wouldn't make them demolish it when it's that blatant. So to the city attorney, I just don't know, what is legal, what isn't legal.
So I think one of the the points you mentioned last, the forcing someone to demolish is something that we could certainly do. And we could either make it something that needs to apply in a specific instance. We'd have to quantify that instance and we'd have to say exactly what it takes. Or we can make it a remedy available to whoever is making the decision, maybe the building official, if they determine that this was an intentional construction or erection of a structure, then he can require demolition of it as a potential remedy for it rather than going to planning commission. That is giving discretion on it. So it's not going to be universal. And personally over at the city attorney's office, we like the discretion because it allows us to provide different remedies in different cases. So I don't necessarily see that as a negative, but it could be seen as a negative from a deterrent standpoint, because obviously if someone believes that there's a chance they won't have to demolish it, that doesn't provide the same level of deterrent as knowing that they will have to demolish it if they're found to have done it. The fee structures, if we do a penalty, that is something that's going to be capped by state law. I looked today and I believe the maximum you can do, and this is for a third violation, which could just be the third day of building something, but it would be $1,300. And it starts, I believe, at 170, then 700. And then the third violation can be 1,300 for however long they do it. There are going to be issues in if someone stops and they are issued a stop work order, there would have to be a separate analysis done on whether just keeping that structure up is a continuing violation, or if the day they stop work is the last day that there's actually a violation. And that's something I can do research on and come back to you with on whether or not that's a continuing violation. There are also the remedies available at the city attorney's office to go to a court and have them removed. So, I mean, there is something that we can get called an injunction, and we can go declare this as a public nuisance, that they have built something that they were not allowed to build, and get it demolished. That takes a lot of time and resources though, and it's something that we typically do not do except in the most extreme cases. But since we are talking about potential extreme cases, that is something that we do have at our disposal if it's ever necessary. I apologize, I'm blanking on a couple of the other things you mentioned. So what did I miss on?
I actually think you covered it all.
Oh, I do remember the contractors versus the private citizen. There's
yeah.
no way that we could penalize. I don't believe that there's a way that we could penalize someone with more fees based on the character of the person they are, if they're an entity or if they're a private party. But I do believe that those separate avenues of one has a business license, one can be subject to censure by their licensing agency. They are inherently different. So there's ways that we can try to explore what can be done, and we can come back and provide guidance on that for council to give us direction on.
Okay, thank you very much. So it sounds like actually there have been a lot of comments on this particular agenda item, and we do not have to make a decision this evening. We're basically giving direction. And so to our city attorney and to Director Gardner, do you have enough information to gather and put together a future staff report on this?
I believe so. I'll defer to Director Gardner. I think we are going to explore options about potential revocation of business licenses. We're going to look at specific instances on whether a person should be required to demolish versus having discretion to demolish. And there was definitely an emphasis on historic aspects of buildings. So that's something we'd look at, and whether or not there should be a warning-based system, kind of proving intent where a second violation is more severe than the first. But if I missed one, please let me know so we can note
In
it.
addition, I think the changes in the field.
In the
That
field.
Does a building official or have discretion, or does this come in front of the, planning commission at the time, or is this something maybe the city attorney helps decide when this happens?
And just for clarification, the city attorney's office and the code enforcement division is always going to have their administrative remedies available as well. So as of now, that's $100 for the first violation, $200, and then $500. So that's something that's always at our disposal, and we can do even with the status quo. If we felt that there was an intentional violation, we could give those remedies. But again, that is not something council can direct us to do. that's something ethically we have to have the prosecutorial discretion to make that decision on our own.
Very good. Is there anything anyone would like to add? Okay, I think we covered it all. All right, on that note, then we'll move to item number 11, Council Committee and Activities Reports and Announcements. Is there anything that any of my colleagues would like to mention? Okay, if not, does anyone want to put anything on future agenda items?
And Mayor O'Brien, I'm sorry, may I just, I'm sorry, I couldn't get my thing up fast enough. I just had one mention for items.
For future agenda item?
No, for just to let everybody know something we're
Meeting?
working on at Home
Sure.
for All.
Go ahead.
So, just two things. You're going to start to see on Peninsula Clean Energy more of the programs that are coming down. I'm working with Niall to make sure we're getting those into our newsletter so that people are aware about an e-bike and EV rebates and water heater rebates and different things like that. And the second is Home for All. Today, I worked with the staff for quite a while. We're recrafting up the message to really frame it around the need for affordable housing, mainly the low income and the very low income RHNA numbers. And so we will be developing some resources for council people to use when speaking to constituents and for city staff to use as we work through our RHNA numbers and our housing plan that we have to approve for this year. So I just want you to be on the lookout, and I'll get that to you as soon as we get something.
Great, thank you, Council Member Coulson. Vice Mayor Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just thought real quick, let you guys know that when we were at a CCAG meeting last week, our Executive Director, Sandy Wong, announced her retirement. So for those of you who've worked with her, she's wonderful and we're going to miss her.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Ortiz. All right, to future agenda items. Did anyone want to place anything on future agenda items? If not, I actually kind of want to mention something we touched upon this evening in regard to tree roots and contractors or tree companies cutting roots when they're not supposed to. Do we want to discuss that and how penalties come into play or notifications or anything like that?
I might make a suggestion.
Yes.
If I can discuss this with staff and just see what our current practice is,
Okay.
and what it should be, and then we'll get back to you maybe offline and let you know, because it may be that we have something in place and just, this particular contractor messed up, but I don't know that information until I talk to Public Works about it, because it sounded like it was a sidewalk contractor.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
All right, any acknowledgements? No? Okay, so then on that note, just a reminder, we do have a goal session meeting coming up this Saturday, the 23rd of January at 9 a.m. And that will be on Zoom. And then our next regular council meeting will be on the 1st of February. All right, so thank you very much, everyone, and have a very nice evening. Good night.
Everyone.